So today we're going to be doing the actual DRL install. As you can tell over there, I have my setup all ready to go. And in the time being, I kind of want to knock two birds with one stone, is this carrier. Now this carrier is purchased from SUVNEER. And again, hopefully I believe I'm pronouncing it right. But pretty much it's the same company that I purchased almost every component on Panzer when it comes to carbon fiber, whether it's diffuser, the side skirt inlays, extensions, side skirt extensions, the front lip, the E55 conversion, and of course the actual carbon fiber wing. And very soon there's going to be, hopefully if everything works well, a 4-fin diffuser and a newer wing available for the E55 or any W211 chassis. Now back to this carrier. So this carrier I purchased from them, and it's a relatively good price, a good bargain. It is a collapsible carrier, has 2 compartments, and with the actual compartment in, takes about that much trunk space. As you can see, I have my backpack still majority of trunk space in the back. Now what I mean by collapsible on that part is, I'm going to take this out. Mainly I use it for all my cleaning supplies. Pretty much my spray wax, my vacuum cleaner, little accessories, little items, little basic tools, zip ties, gloves, my German flag, and the basics. So it collapsed really well, and it's made with some pretty good material. High grade polyester with nylon inlays, which is pretty good. And it's pretty thick material on the bottom, very good padding in the bottom, so it's pretty stiff. And it can go into a 1 compartment, which you can see there, which is awesome. This is pretty neat. And it has this strap here. It's mainly to be collapsible through this end because this strap holds it together once it's collapsed. But you know, I did this other side just because it's easier. I don't have to take all these items out. But it's a pretty good piece, down to a single compartment, and it's fully collapsible on both sides, so you can store it if you have nothing in there, and you can actually have it stored, and it actually fits pretty good right here on the side compartment here, right behind my backpack. Now this organizer, this is a very good quality. Pretty much the side organizer are wrapped in a vinyl carbon fiber textured material. It's pretty stiff, pretty thick. And then obviously it has a side end pocket here for paperwork, files, anything slim. It's pretty stretchable. Good to hold the license plate, which is that over there. Pretty spacious for the most part. The handling itself is also wrapped in a vinyl rubberized material. The handle is also with the vinyl covering. It's very durable, very stiff, kind of difficult to bend, so it has good support. And obviously on this side as well, in this fibered material, or this vinylized material, or I guess they would call it a PCV leather. It's like a vinylish, leatherish material. But it's a pretty good build quality as far as the sewing. Pretty strong. But yeah, you know, this storage compartment organizer is pretty good. Pretty good for the price compared to the other organizers. I like it. It works really well with me. Fully collapsible. Can go into a single or 2 compartment. Holds pretty much all my necessities for this car. And it fits pretty good at the back end, nice and neat. Now the cool thing about this organizer is you could also stick some, you can either sew or 3M adhesive on the under end with some Velcro. Now I wouldn't put so much because it'll be a pain in the ass to pull off, but you know what you can do is just stick about 1/4 of an inch of Velcro on the corners, and I would actually sew it in if you're really good with a needle. just a couple of things just to kind of hold it in place, and it won't slide around. This thing does not slide around anyway. Unless I go wide open throttle, then this thing will slide back here. But you know, for the most part, I do drive this car pretty hard sometimes, and especially on some turns, and a couple of donuts every now and then. So, and none of these items here have fallen out of the organizer, or the organizer hasn't tipped over. It's pretty wide, so you know, as far as a rollover, it's not really gonna do it. Especially if you have items in there that are pretty weighted, like that wax that I have in there in that gallon container. But it does pretty good. It's a pretty good item to add to your for your E55 storage, so you don't have to have anything kind of loose. Or in this case, for me, I have some other tools and stuff on the bottom. No spare tire, but you know, hey, who needs a spare tire nowadays? All right, you guys. So pretty much, I'm going to be installing these DRLs, carbon fiber DRLs, and I know I made a previous video on my Instagram, but for the YouTube, I'm making a special video to install these units here. And these are a beautiful mold, carbon fiber with a walled LED housing. But with these actually have SMDs, as you can tell. The SMDs are better quality. They'll last a lot longer, and they're hell of a lot brighter, because I just tested them right now outside on my E55 dub name Panzer, just to see how they would work. And there's 3 different ways to wire them up, and I spent like a good amount of time trying to figure out which one of the methods I want to choose. There's one obviously with the engine bay fuse compartment. There's a fuse there that's hooked up for the cigarette lighter, and you can just pull a 12-volt source from that. The downside is they're always on. Every time, the moment you put that key in, plug it into ignition, go to position 2, they're going to be on. And in my mind, I thought it'd be nice to have them on. It would be nice to not have them on. I was jumping back and forth, you know, between all the different methods. That was the first method. The second method is using the fog lamp harness, which these obviously are going to replace the E63 styled fog lamps. I do have the E63 conversion bumper, which I purchased from Gary Lowe. Now, the specifications in that bumper, it's a European spec, so it does not have from the American spec, it does not have the side marker inlets. So there's no side marker on the side, and ever since I installed that, I had those little side marker indicators pretty much on there, kind of tucked away. And I was thinking, you know what, I can use that, and it's a proper 12-volt source. So I did a test. Obviously, I grabbed one of these, I plugged this into the side, and it worked. And it was really, really good. And the good benefit to this is I already had these, and these I'm also going to purchase. I'm also going to link these in the description below, so you can acquire them if you do plan to do this install yourself. And these are resistors. These pretty much will give it the proper voltage for these LEDs, since these are a lot lower than the standard bulbs, which are going to be these in general. These are required for any type of LED installs. Or any LED bulbs. So obviously these are going to plug into the harness. I am going to heat shrink that section so it's watertight, tuck it away, and then obviously from the standard connectors, I'm going to plug them in with the harness, which this harness I made myself. The kit, when you buy these DRLs, they come with their own wires. They come with the yellow, black, and white. And I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, that's the third method. The third method is the side markers. And since I have the European spec bumper, I have really no use for those bulbs, and they're kind of exposed in some senses. So I'm going to make use of that harness and seal it up and be detachable, so it's still functional when I take off the bumper. So yeah, that's going to be my third method, and that's what we're going to be doing for the install. Now, when you buy this kit, it's going to come with its own harness. It doesn't look like this because I did this myself, because I was still between the first 2 options, which is the fuse box, which I was going to just pretty much borrow a fuse in it and connect its own power source to this harness. So I made this one to mimic that. Since I didn't want to do the fog lamp one, I made this one in general. And this one right here doesn't. When you buy it, it doesn't look like this. But basically, this is your power and ground. Obviously, black being ground. The white color would be being power. And obviously, it splits into Ys here, and it has two connectors where you can plug in the passenger and driver side. Passenger and driver side DRLs. So they have the plug-in source. So it's pretty much a Y setup, Y harness. And I kind of prepped it for that method. But since when I was thinking, I'm thinking, you know what, I can do the actual side markers and use that bulb harness for this. So what I'm gonna do, and I'm just gonna kind of show you, if you guys do plan to do the first method, which is the fuse box, which is up in the driver compartment, under the hood on the driver's side. Pretty much you just look for the correct fuse inlet for the cigarette lighter, which is a 10 amp fuse. And obviously this just plugs into its place, and then you put it's a 20 amp fuse for these units here. And that just protects, just in case of these fog lamps or these DRLs kind of, throw any misvoltage or anything like that, it'll pop that versus, damaging the actual DRLs and burning them up, or damaging your fuse box. There's always a safety for that part. Now, so pretty much what I did on this harness is, obviously I covered it in this special braid. Now most of you guys will probably buy like a cheap plastic loom, and those don't really last that long. You can get them at AutoZone, you can get them at Walmart or any of those places, and you could find the correct size, but that is not really a proper protecting source. One, it's split in the middle. This is also split in the middle, and I'll also link this material as well. It's a very tough, durable material to split open, but when you do, it unravels itself, and you can feed the wire in. Now this braiding is very strong against high temperature, and it's very flexible for the most part, so you can actually run it like regular wire. If you needed to get into a tight crevice or a tight spot, it will protect these wires from exposure from the elements, because sometimes manufacturers, when they give the wiring harnesses for like, let's say a setup like this, it's not going to be that great as far as like the insulation. It might get brittle, it might get stiff, it might start to peel, break, it might be very thin, and you don't want any electrical gremlins on this part. And it's a pretty simple thing. Obviously you'll feed it through, and then you finish the end with heat shrink. So the only thing that's really exposed is just this end. So if anything else happens down the road, you can just cut and resolder it, or just if you really want to do the whole harness. I left it about this much, mainly because it's not really going to be much, because it's right behind the lower bumper. There's not much heat, maybe some water, dirt, but it shouldn't do much to this harness at all. But everything else that's in the engine bay or closer to the heat exchangers can. So you want to make sure you protect the harness, and I did the same here. I split the two, obviously with some heat shrink, a smaller heat shrink all the way down to the end. And this is going to feed into the remainder of the engine. And obviously I was going to cover and complete the rest of this harness, but I'm not doing that. I'm just kind of giving you this information. If you do plan to do the fuse box route, for that matter. But again, we're not doing that. So what I'm going to have to do is just kind of chop up this harness. What I'm going to do is pretty much just cut in from the Y, cut from here, and just use these sections here to feed to the actual side marker harness, all the way up into the DRL harness, which is these little connectors at the back end. You can see back over here. Now, if you're wondering what this yellow one is, this is for like the dimmer. This is more of an advanced thing if you want to sync it into the actual let's say fuse box, or to get the proper voltage, so where it dims down during daylight and then obviously it's full brightness during night, or vice versa. We're not going to be doing that, or I'm not going to be covering that. All I pretty much want is just a DRLs to run with the side markers only when it's on. Now with the side markers, they only turn on when you unlock the car, if you have your car settings set to that, which is great because these will turn on at night when I unlock the car. And when I'm driving, they'll turn on with the side marker indicator with the actual car when I'm driving. So these are only going to be on when I'm driving at night or towards the late evening when the circuit lamp turns on my E55, which is pretty much what I want to do. I don't want these on during the day. To me, there's no need. It's bright. It's unnecessary, and it conserves life on these SMDs, which these are switched out. Gary Lowe mentioned that the old walled, pretty much this is the old walls housing, and the SMD circuit board has been swapped out with the SMDs versus the standard ones, which typically didn't have a long lifespan. I would give it like maybe if you were to run it 24/7, it could give out for a year before they start to maybe have issues. It just very depends on temperature and a bunch of other things of water. But as far as water getting in this housing, but it's pretty sealed. I did take it off and I did inspect it. It's a pretty good seal. And like I mentioned, if you're wondering why it's so blurry, it's because it has a protective film on it prior to install, so you don't scratch this up. But here's a good look at this this piece, and it's a very beautiful mold, and these are designed to fit perfectly snug in there. Now, we're already pretty much 12 minutes into this video, and I try not to drag this so long, but we are going to do an install portion on this. And just to give you a rundown on this itself, it does require some cutting. Now, bear with me. The cutting is nothing on the exterior or inner parts of the bumper. There's a bracket in the center, which the fog lamp kind of sits on. Be as you may, when we take everything out and when I show you in depth, you'll understand. But there's a center bracket inside the bumper. It's plastic that actually has two mounting points for the other side of the mounting points of the fog lamp. So there's 4 mounting points. Obviously, you got 1, 2, 3, and 4. That little center plastic piece is for those center pieces, and you do have to snip that middle bracket so this can slit flushed in. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's pretty much the only downside to this is you have to alter your bumper. I'm pretty sure though, if you ever plan to sell your E55 or sell your 63 bumper or just swap or put back the standard fogs, I'm pretty sure those 2 side posts that are still remaining can still hold that fog lamp, so you can still switch back your pieces, because all it is it holds the other side portion of the fog lamps, which in reality it's held by the entire fascia of the old frame, which the standard 63 fog lamps sit in. It's the same thing, so it'll still bolt in from the corner ends, so you can still go back. Even if you do cut that bracket, it's not going to be a bad thing, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about when we continue the install, when I go out there and do the install itself. But yeah, those are the 3 points: either the fuse box, the fog lamp harness, or your side markers. And it's going to be a pretty simple install other than getting this mounted in. Oh, and yes, I always would forget something. Mounting this, I'm pretty sure you're wondering how this mounts in. I am going to think of another way of doing it. I know one way of doing it is self-tapping screws. Yes, I know it's not a pleasant thing, but you don't see any of it on the inner part of the bumper, which is pretty much the stuff nobody ever sees. There's fins, and those fins, you self-tap screws into that fin, and then it goes into here. I know, yes, it's you won't see any of this. All this here is pretty much will never be seen. What's important is this inner lining is what's going to be seen. So whatever you drill in from the side here, 2 pieces, there's 2 sides, and the other one is here is 2 sides, and you could do the top. Well, actually, no, you can't do the top. I'm sorry. No, you don't want to do the top. But yeah, that's the method of installing these. I'm gonna think of a different way. Maybe I can make a bracket out of some standard Home Depot pieces and just fabricate something simple. But we'll see. But that's pretty much the whole play for the whole ball game for this install, and that's pretty much it. We're gonna go ahead and continue on the actual install portion. All right, so now begins the process of installing my DRLs purchased from SUVNEER. And I got everything ready, including the harnesses. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, chopped the harness from the Y split, and if you're wondering what this is heat shrink, because I'm going to solder them to the resistor packs here. I'm going to heat shrink them through and finish it off with this. Well, this heat shrink here is going to be covering the connector plug of the factory harness. And right over here we have the complete harness. This is obviously going to go into the DRLs. This goes to the resistors. Resistors go into the actual harness itself, which I have it hanging there for visual purposes. I'm going to have to clean this one. See, this is what I mean by it being exposed. Mainly because it's on the bottom, so it does catch a bit of water. Now, for the fog lights, I don't want this to happen to my fog lights either. So I'm going to be doing, well, actually, no, with the fog lights, they actually are pretty sealed through, so water shouldn't get into them, to the connector. So I'm not too worried about this. These were just sitting there with the bulb, and there's no covering here. At least with the connector where it connects to the fog light, it's not going to be exposed as much. But I am thinking of, since the fog lights are so small, these E63 ones, I'm probably going to go ahead and mount them reverse inwards if I have space, or I'll think of something. And just ignore this film covering. I just did it just so I can see what it would look like aesthetically wise. I kind of liked it. It kind of did really well with the yellow, but they're going to be gone anyway. So back to the install here. You can see that bracket back there. It's right here to your left, right over there. That's the bracket we're going to have to cut off. And then that's on both ends as well. And that's pretty much where this fog light mounts to. And typically the main support is through this bracket as well. So in reality, is that bird shit? Yep, that is bird shit. Gonna have to clean that up. My car is really dirty right now, and there's some rock chips and some debris, so ignore that. We'll just go based off this without me trying to clean anything. Let's see. So our plan of attack pretty much is, you have two options. I'm gonna just go ahead and remove the underpan, the front guard pretty much, and take off the fog inlets. And that's pretty much all you need to do. If you go my route, if you do the route where you're suggesting as far as doing it from these side marker posts, which obviously there's no side marker at all, this would be the best route. You don't have to take off the bumper. But if you do another method, I do recommend taking off the bumper so you can run the wire more cleanly, unless you don't mind just kind of forcing it in somewhere and just pulling it along the front end to reach to the fuse box right over here under the engine compartment, which is where you'll get the SIG lamp inlet right there, our power source. But for me, it's going to be simple. So pretty much we have our tools. It's a powered ratchet because it is a tight spot. This is pretty much to insert the self-tapping screws, which I got about 8 of them. You only need 3 per side, and I'll show you why. This is kind of like a cheap method to do it. You could try to do you know, more of a better as far as for bolts and nuts, but trying to get that bolt inside the crevice is going to be a pain in the ass. And I thought about it. Let me just take this fog lamp out. It's already a tight fit. My phone can focus. It's pretty tight fit. So, and that's an unfinished area. So you see how it's all hazy? That's where the bolts are going to go into, or the 2 screws are going to go in. And from other users that have installed the older DRLs, like the first versions, they didn't have an issue with them. They held pretty good. 3 per side. 3. You got 2 on one side and 1 on the end over here, and that's pretty much it. It held pretty good, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and go that route because I know it's going to be a pain in the ass to try to get the bolts on. If you want to do that route, you have to take off the bumper. It'll save you a lot of time. It'll be a lot easier, and you don't have to worry about damaging anything, or your hands won't your hands will thank you, because you'll get a arm cramp or a hand cramp, and then you're ended up just cussing at the whole time you're installing these, but that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. So the first thing is belly pan. I'll tell you one thing, it's a hell of a lot easier to do with a power tool. Well, not easier, quicker. So, that was pretty easy enough. And I'm pretty upset now because I got a oil residue. I always keep these pretty clean so I can tell, but judging by the fluid, that's power steering. So I got a power steering leak somewhere. More than likely it's probably a seal. Not too worried about that because I do plan to replace the reservoir seal anyway. I put a new one, but maybe it was a bad gasket. Let's check everything out. So here's the harness. Oh yeah, it's a very small leak, minor residue. It is getting everything soaked over here in a way. Oh man, let me tell you, that is like the worst thing I've ever done to my car. I cringed and I cried a little, but I got it off. And believe it or not, I know some of you are gonna fucking hate me for this. I use this. Couldn't get a Dremel. I don't have a air compressor, and trying to use a power tool is hard to get in that purpose, but this was actually pretty simple. This ABS plastic is really soft, so I was able to cut right through it with ease. But let me tell you, man, that was the most painfulest thing I've ever done. Now I have all this debris of the ABS, which seems to be clinging to the paint. But that's pretty much it. This is what you're left with. That's what's required to install these DRLs. And to give you an idea with it kind of put in, that's pretty much what I'll be dealing with there. I just got to flush this in more, but and there you go. That honestly looks really good in my opinion, especially with this carbon fiber. Look at that, it's clean. Very good quality from Gary Lowe. Pretty much everything's good quality from Gary Lowe. From the bumper, you can tell from the bumper itself is from Gary Lowe. It's the E63 conversion. Perfectly seams and sits flush. No gaps. The body shop didn't really need to do much to get it to fit. Hardly anything, just a little bit of a sanding down for prep and paint. That's pretty much it. Everything was plug and play. I did that side as well. Making some good progress. Now the next step is fitting. Now I have masking tape, and the masking tape I'm going to use to hold it in place. And what I'm going to do is just make sure I have it sit flush where I want it. Once I get it where the position where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and pull it out again and run the wiring. Pretty much did an electrical test and it came out pretty good as far as me getting power to the unit. Here's my harness. So what I ended up doing, since this one is somewhat corroded, I'm going to clean it and just keep it on the side for, you can always reinstall these back. It's not really a problem. But for those that are doing this install yourselves, obviously your brown is always ground, and your gray and red is your power. And pretty much solder and heat shrink it to the resistor. And then the resistor, obviously the white that comes with the kit, goes to power, and the black obviously goes to brown for ground. And solder and heat shrink through. I'm going to go ahead and relume this all the way to the tip and heat shrink it so it's sealed on this end. As for this side, I have heat shrink on this end. I'm going to just pull this loom back over and you should be good. But there's the harness all hooked up. I'm going to disconnect it and we're going to get ready for mounting. And the mounting is pretty simple. If you see that piece of carbon fiber, that's where it's going to mount to. 2 self-tap screws go on that end. And they'll go right through this piece right here, which is pretty simple. As for the other end, since this piece sits along this adjacent here, this part of the bumper, 1 self-tapping screw there, which is going to go onto that side, which I know is going to be painful to do, but if you're able to cut your bumper, you're able to drill into your carbon fiber DRLs. But like I said, the only thing you're going to be seeing is the front. So the front and up here on the side edging border, on the borderline of this mold, and you should be good to go. Beautiful. There's a perfect fit right there. God, man, Gary Lowe, you're fucking awesome, bro. I like how your quality control is top notch. That looks amazing. And it holds. Oh, wow, it actually does hold pretty good. Let's pop it out. There we go. Cool deal. Actually wanted to show you guys pretty much how I installed everything. If I can get a good view underneath. So on this inner side right here, that tapping screw right there, that's 1. On the sharp edge side, you put it as high as you can and closest to the edge. That's going to grab the side molding of the DRL housing. And then for the other side, you can see the other 2. As long as you get them towards the center, and typically you want to gauge it by feel and by where you see the placement of the backing plate of the DRL housing, which pretty much goes up against that brace right there of the bumper where the fog light housing used to be. And you can easily just go ahead and tap those 2, and it is pretty secure. It is not going to move. There's enough threading there to hold it, and with these type of screws, vibrations won't undo them. Alright, I must say this install was pretty easy as long as you prep and get your harnesses set and get a game plan going. This took less than an hour to do, minus the times I've been trying to make this video. So, you know, still got to do that right side, but this left side is just about done, or actually is done. And I say it looks pretty good, and I think it makes that front end look a lot more modernized. Very satisfied with this. Look at that fitment, man. That fitment is spot on. It fits perfect. Look at that on the side. Look at that. Damn, Gary. This is an awesome product. I'd recommend this for anybody who has the E63 front end conversion or an E63 W211. This is it.